Kentucky is known for many things like basketball, whether that's UK or U of L. They're known for bluegrass, which could be the actual grass or the music. And they're known for horse racing, which could be the Derby or Keeneland. But how many of you know what one of Kentucky's main exports and what Kentucky is possibly most famous for? What I'm talking about is bourbon. It's one of the things that makes Kentucky, Kentucky. Throughout the state, there are currently 14 major distilleries, and there are also several minor micro distilleries. Most of these distilleries are in the central bluegrass region of the state. I'm going to tell you about the history of bourbon and how it's made, what exactly the Bourbon Trail is, and then go in depth about the Wild Turkey Distillery. So let's start with the history of bourbon. Bourbon is a form of whiskey that has been distilled in the United States for over 200 years. It can only be legally made in the United States and set up by guidelines set by the government. According to the Kentucky Tourism website, Congress designated bourbon as America's original native spirit. Congress mandates that bourbon is distilled with 51 to 79% corn and is barreled in new white oak barrels. Then it must be aged for at least 2 years. Bourbon was first made whenever corn at the end of the year there was extra corn at the end of the year, so that way they didn't have to transport it hundreds of miles to sell it. It was first distilled in the late 1790s in Bourbon County, Kentucky, when Thomas Jefferson gave settlers 60 acres of land to produce whiskey on. This was all because of the Whiskey Rebellion of 1794. Bourbon is made with a mixture of corn and other ingredients like rye, wheat, and barley. The grains are first crushed into a powder and then put in iron-free water and cooked between 150 and 220 degrees depending on which ingredients you use. Next, they put it into a fermentation tub where yeast is added. It sits here for 3 days before they put it into a still. Once they put it into a still, they will distill it at 200 degrees. After this process is done, the alcohol will then be put into charred oak barrels and stored in a warehouse for at least 2 years. Over 95% of the world's supply of bourbon is from the bluegrass region of Kentucky. According to the American University History of Bourbon website, bourbon is distilled mostly in Kentucky because of the pure limestone filtered water that gives Kentucky bourbon a distinct taste. Bourbon helps provide to the economy also. It provides over 9,000 jobs to Kentuckians and also $125 million in tax revenue to the state government. Next, I will tell you about the Bourbon Trail. The Kentucky Bourbon Trail runs throughout the bluegrass region of Kentucky from Louisville to Lexington to highlight some of Kentucky's major bourbon distilleries. It was started in 1999 by the Kentucky Distillers Association, and it was started to show the craftsmanship of distilling bourbon. According to the Kentucky Bourbon Trail website, the Bourbon Trail was created to show the rich history and proud tradition of our signature spirit. 8 of Kentucky's biggest distillers are represented along the trail. These 8 are Four Roses, Heaven Hill, Jim Beam, Wild Turkey, Town Branch, Maker's Mark, Evan Williams, and Woodford Reserve. All 8 offer tours during normal business hours, and it takes about 3 days if you want to go on and do all 8 tours at once. On one of these tours, you'll end up making your way around the facility at the distillery to see the daily operations and also get a history lesson about that specific distillery. Then you'll be taken to what they call a tasting room where you can try the products that they provide, and this is only allowed if you're of legal drinking age. If you're not, they'll give you soda. And at the end of your tour, you will then be taken to the gift shop where you can look around and buy something, or you can just leave. Last, let's look at a distillery, the Wild Turkey Distillery. Wild Turkey Distillery is one of the oldest and well-known distilleries in Kentucky. It's from Lawrenceburg. It was started in 1869 by the Rippey brothers when they came to Anderson County from Ireland. They started their distillery on Wild Turkey Hill, but it was not originally called Wild Turkey. The bourbon was only sold at a store by a man named Austin Nichols. The brand was later bought by Austin Nichols, in which his name appears on their most famous bourbon, Wild Turkey 101. Then in 1940, executives of the Austin Nichols Corporation The Austin Nichols Corporation thought of the name Wild Turkey Distillery while they were on a wild turkey hunt. Wild Turkey has since become world famous and has won many awards and recognitions. Jimmy Russell is their master distiller and has been making award-winning bourbon at Wild Turkey for over 50 years. Wild Turkey is considered one of the top sellers for bourbon in the U.S. and in the world. And according to the Wild Turkey Distillery website, their bourbon has won countless awards in U.S. and world bourbon competitions. So in conclusion, bourbon is as much a part of Kentucky as bluegrass, basketball, and horse racing. Bourbon has a history in the United States, specifically in the bluegrass region of Kentucky. The Bourbon Trail shows the great pride that Kentucky has for its bourbon, and the Wild Turkey Distillery is one of Kentucky's oldest and most well-known distilleries. I hope once you become of age, you contribute to the Kentucky's bourbon industry, take in the Bourbon Trail, and even try the unmatched taste of Wild Turkey. Thanks.
Count 'em down.
Many of you have played a sport or currently play a sport and recognize this symbol right away is the logo for Under Armour. Under Armour, as recent as 2003, has jumped onto the sports industry market and has been growing rapidly ever since. Today, they compete with Nike and Adidas in the sports market and have dabbled in all the major sports like football, baseball, soccer, basketball, and football. I think I said that already. In a 5-year span from 2008 to 2013, Under Armour grew from a $700 million company to a $2.33 billion company. But I would like to inform you guys on more than this, on how Under Armour started, on the gear they make, and how Under Armour has grown. In 1996, a 23-year-old Kevin Plank got started in his grandma's basement in Baltimore, Maryland. Plank played football at Maryland and was a special teams captain. By his teammates, he was known as the sweatiest guy in the field. He hated the feeling of having soaked cotton clothes on while he was playing, and this is what gave him an idea. He wanted to create something that was lighter, more comfortable, and durable. Lighter in weight and also light because of its ability to keep off moisture. After much research and testing, he found his material. He found a synthetic dry fit material. This material caught on quickly as he began passing out T-shirts to former teammates and also to local high schools and small universities around Maryland. According to Under Armour's website, after Plank saw popularity growing, he decided to put a $25,000 ad in ESPN's magazine. Following this ad, Under Armour saw sales grow to $1 million. This was a huge spike, as before this he only made $19,000. Several years later, in 2003, Plank asked former teammate Eric Agbogu to come in and be in one of his commercials he was going to put out. It was the first commercial, and Under Armour was finally on our TV sets. Eric he played with Maryland, and he also went to the NFL for 9 years. And in this time, Under Armour, in this commercial, Eric made the line, "We must protect this house," famous. And this is one of the mottos that we all know Under Armour by. Under Armour began making all types of clothing after this advertisement. Plank stayed with his light, comfortable, and durable aspects of the clothing. By doing this, he had one solution: a special material made of microfibers that was able to do all three of these things. It was able to keep the moisture off the clothes, keep the athletes cool, dry, and therefore lighter. This made things more comfortable for the athletes. Also, the stretchy material was durable. In addition to this, it regulated body temperature, and just due to its makeup. Athletes began to fall in love with the apparel. Nike and Adidas, watching from the sidelines, saw a company before their eyes turn into a true competitor. Another characteristic of the clothing that made it popular was the fit. Athletes like the aerodynamic feeling. With its light and tight feel, athletes gained a competitive and psychological edge. This is what made Under Armour sell. This is what put Under Armour on the map and made them a force in the sports industry world. We all know how picky athletes are about their apparel, and this jump-started at Under Armour. Under Armour has grown tremendously and has been on the market for over a decade. According to a Washington Post article, Under Armour has done 5 things to enable them to grow. Step 1 is to target non-athletes, kids and adults who do not play a sport. They can wear this as fashion instead of athletic gear. Step 2 was to target kids. Kids do not have any brand perception. They want to look cool, and they didn't know which was better, Nike, Adidas, or Under Armour. Third step was fixing mistakes fast. When Under Armour started, it didn't even target women. It targeted male athletes. But since that, they have fixed that, and women make up 1/3 of their sales. Step 4 was finding the right sponsorships. They've taken Notre Dame, Tom Brady, Lindsey Vonn, Michael Phelps, and his school, Maryland, under their arms. Lastly, they've grown overseas. Now, 7% of their sales come from overseas. Compared to Nike, 60%, this isn't much, which is why they need to grow more and establish a market outside of the United States to grow even farther. Under Armour has grown yearly, and their wallets have been bulking up tremendously. According to MarketWatch.com, they posted their income statements, and the numbers don't lie. They have been growing by an average of $450 million a year since 2009. They have become a force like its main competitors, Nike and Adidas. Nike and Adidas have seen this growth and have since come out with similar products to stay in the game. I hope to have given you a little more knowledge about these products, and we will see Under Armour continue to grow. Maybe you guys have enjoyed the products just like myself. And I have a quick video of the first commercial. Thank you.